Welcome to 10, the Tenant Experience Network. I'm your host, David Abrams. In this episode, we are connecting with Phil Kanfer, founder and CEO, Market Lane Advisors. In this episode, we learned that Phil's career journey had finance and entrepreneurial beginnings, which led him to real estate with Newmark as a tenant rep broker in Lower Manhattan. Phil eventually met the CEO of a newly emerging company now called WiredScore, and was brought in to help bring the business to market. This company saw an opportunity to create a measure and certification of how well a building is connected through technology. In the early days, Phil's back was against the wall. He believed that this new opportunity had to work, which for him meant doing his best work, as there was nowhere else to go. Phil ran sales and revenue for over 9 years and helped grow the business to 150 plus people and operating in 25 different countries. Fast forward and acknowledging that historically, there has not been any one person overseeing innovation and technology in CRE, Phil saw an opportunity to support the industry by providing fractional or an outsourced innovation lead to help select and implement the right technology solutions. And so, Market Lane was born, providing an unbiased expertise to choose the right technology for each and every building based on its own set of unique characteristics. Phil has seen firsthand how building owners look to the hospitality industry for inspiration on the future of office buildings. Our conversation naturally led to a discussion around customer experience and the need for more collaboration between building owners, operators, and their tenants. Recognizing that we are still in the early innings of this game, I look forward to our continued connection as we both explore the intersection of technology and commercial real estate. We're excited to share this podcast with you, so be sure to subscribe to 10 so you never miss an episode of the Tenant Experience Network. And now I'd like to welcome Phil to the show. I'm really glad you could be with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good. Glad we were able to find time to connect, and from Toronto to New York, keep those airwaves going here. So let's kick it off with a conversation around how you started in this position role. What was your journey? I always enjoy this question, as the roads to where we land today are always so varied, and I'm looking forward to hearing about your journey.
Yeah, certainly a journey. So I think my career, you could kind of break it into two halves. I spent the first part of my career in finance and entrepreneurship. So helped start a company after I graduated college 20 years ago. And I gave it out there. I know many people don't. And went into finance. Was working in finance for a while. Left that world when the crisis happened in the aftermath of that, and kind of reinvented myself. Got into real estate. Went over to Newmark, where I was a tenant rep broker.
Right.
Working there in Lower Manhattan, spending most of my time in Lower Manhattan. And from there, I met someone who was starting a business, which was called Wired NYC at the time, which is now known as WiredScore. But I was approached because there was a problem that this company was looking to solve, and that was a lack of clarity and information on how well connected an office building is. Mm-hmm. So I got approached by our CEO and said, "Hey, listen, I don't have a background in real estate. I know you've been working in real estate for a little while. I have this idea that I'd like to bring to market, and I love your help bring that to market, helping to launch our business and communicating to brokers and to landlords on what they should be doing to distinguish their buildings from a technology standpoint in order to attract and retain tenants." Okay. So this was end of 2013, and what was happening during that time was we were seeing a migration of tech tenants. Coming from Seattle, San Francisco area, and they were coming to New York City. They're coming to the East Coast, and they're all asking questions about how well connected or how tech friendly the office stock was. Right. And there was no main mechanism to share with them how well connected the office stock was. you have LEED or you have Energy Star for green buildings, but you had nothing for technology. So at my time at Newmark, I was touring tenants through New York City, and I was constantly getting the question regarding, technology in buildings and telecommunications. How well can I connect, and, high-speed fiber options and things like that. So I said to our CEO, I said, listen, I'm seeing the problem on a daily basis as I'm touring tenants throughout the city. I think we have something here. So I left Newmark at the time. I had 6-month-old twins. So it was kind of this had to work because the back was against the wall and, young kids at home. And I think actually when your back's against the wall is when we do our best work, because there's nowhere else to go. So I partnered with our CEO to help bring this concept to market. So I ran sales and revenue for WiredScore. It was the two of us for a year and a half before we hired anyone else onto our team. And to make a long story short, we grew the business. It's a 150 plus person company right now. Offices in about 6 countries, selling in over 25 countries. WiredScore raised its Series B in the summer of 2022. So my job was to develop relationships with the real estate community, both owners and brokers across the U.S. and Canada. So I launched WiredScore into every major city in the U.S. and Canada before we took it over to London and to Europe, running sales, running revenue, and really fostering the relationship with the community to make sure that they had a proper mechanism of communicating to the outside world as to how well connected their office stock was. So that was my journey in terms of kind of the entrepreneur and finance world that I was in, and then kind of recreating myself getting into real estate. Was at WiredScore for 9 years. Okay. And then decided to take on Market Lane towards the end of last summer.
Phil, an awesome journey to WiredScore, but I'd love to hear more about your next phase in your entrepreneurial journey and why and how you started Market Lane.
Yeah, of course. So, I've noticed over the past few years, doing what I've been doing at WiredScore, that there really isn't a key person or one individual within an organization that truly owns innovation. Mm-hmm. At WiredScore, what I would do, what my colleagues would do is, we would call on a real estate organization, and we would generally find, who we thought would be the decision makers for us. It could be an asset manager, it could be a head of leasing, someone in the C-suite. Generally, the person that wears the asset management hat has a more holistic view of the property, of the portfolio, and they're able to make decisions because they're able to make decisions quickly because they have a bigger picture view. It's not just operations, but it's leasing, it's brand, it's how the building's being positioned. So what's happened in the industry is a lot of PropTech companies start calling on asset management. And what happens? Finally, someone in asset management picks up the phone. They start to take the call. They start to listen in on the demo, while all their other colleagues are putting that email in spam or not listening to, or taking that demo. And because this individual has started to take these calls, they've automatically been designated as the PropTech or the innovation person. Now, by the way, this person hasn't spent much time on the innovation side. They haven't done tons of diligence on there. They haven't been trained in PropTech. They've just been the nice individual that's
and curious, right?
Yes. Well, that's a big one, right? And curious. Yeah. They're interested. Yeah. But interest doesn't bring expertise. Yeah. Right. So they're interested and they're curious, which is great for the industry as a whole, and I love to see that. But what I found is that no one fully owns innovation. Right. Now, over the past 10 years, you've noticed that a new title has popped up in real estate, and that title is called Head of Innovation. It didn't exist 10 years ago. It didn't exist, in the beginning of PropTech. So if you're a Brookfield or if you're a Blackstone, you might have a head of innovation on staff. Why? You're a big company. You could absorb it, right? A lot of different departments that could use, innovation in different ways. 98% of the real estate companies out there in the world don't have a head of innovation. Now, why is that? I think it's two main reasons. One, real estate organizations understand what they do really well, right? We property manage well, we're able to lease space. where we asset manage, right? Like we know how to look at valuations. Like they're real estate people through and through. They realize
Yep.
we're not technology people. And on the other side is cost. Like that head of innovation hire, it's a really senior, expensive hire. And we all know that when times are good in real estate companies operate really lean. And when times are a little trickier in real estate, no one's taking on an expensive, super senior hire.
Right.
But they're all looking for the muscle that head of innovation person brings to the table. So I noticed that throughout my time at my last venture. And I said, listen, I think there's an opportunity to fill that void. So what Market Lane is Market Lane is essentially an outsourced head of innovation.
Okay.
And what I do is I come in and I help real estate owners understand, evaluate, decide, and then ultimately onboard the best prop tech decisions for their business.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a critical role. I think it's a critical role. And I think what you provide is sort of that buffer, right? Between, what's best for the organization without bias and being able to, understand the ecosystem of startups and be able to sort of differentiate and help make recommendations, because it's not a one size fits all.
So you said something that actually struck a chord with me, and you said not biased. And I think this is the competitive differentiator for Market Lane, right? Market Lane works only for the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And you could think of it kind of like the owner's rep, right? With no competing interests at all. And I think that's really important to state, because you have a large VC community that's now gotten involved in PropTech, and they're trying to give advice to real estate owners, or they're giving advice to real estate owners. But what are they doing ultimately? They're pitching their investments.
Right.
And real estate organizations know this and they understand this. But the VCs are trying to round out their offering even more by being able to provide advice and guidance on prop tech companies that they should be taking a look at. But the real estate company understands that if they need an EV charging station and they're talking to a VC company, they're only going to get the EV charging station that VC company invested in, right? And that might not be in the best interest for the owner.
Right.
So there's no competing interest at all with Market Lane. I work only for the owner, with their best interest in mind. So that was a good point that you made, that I wanted to make sure that we underlined, because if you're an owner, you need to make sure that my best interests are in mind, and that whoever is working for me is only thinking about me and what's best for my building, what's best for my tenants.
Right. So just one quick question and then we'll move on, but related, in terms of this journey, to go out again on your own and take this entrepreneurial journey even one step further. Can I just, because as an entrepreneur, I'm always interested. What was that motivation? What sort of said to you, you know what, I've been involved in building this company from the ground up. You gave us the size and scope. It sounds pretty exciting. Why take the plunge again?
I'm a builder, and I like building things. And my last venture, it was amazing to see an idea go from just an idea on a page to a built out vision, where we have 150 employees working there. We have the market utilizing this as a standard, and now a global standard, which is really exciting. Yeah. And I wanted to build again. Okay. And look, it's when you find a void in a market, in a market that you've been working in, and you have an idea to fill that void, that's usually a recipe for a good idea. Mm-hmm. So I think, look, like a lot of us could get up in the morning and just go to work and put on that smile, or stay home if we're hybrid, right? Which I'm sure we'll be talking about. A lot of us could do that, and there's no shame in that, and that's amazing. And there's also some of us that want to build and want to create and want to solve problems. Right. And I really enjoy that. So I saw the void. I saw something that I could tackle with my expertise on the broker side, working at a big brokerage firm like Newmark. Yeah. Being able to build a prop tech company from start and do it for the past decade, and then lend my expertise of what I've seen in the industry, the trials and tribulations, how to vet out a prop tech company, how to look at one smartly, how to properly due diligence on it, and bring my expertise to the ownership community.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, and I think more so than just avoid. I think you identified a pain point in the industry right now. So speaking of pain, I think we can all agree that commercial real estate has just gone through one of the most turbulent periods of time that we can ever remember. And commercial real estate continues to be the largest asset class in the world, and it is definitely rebounding from this prolonged period of historically low levels of occupancy. But it's still faced with really coming to terms with what this industry looks like in the future. How does it continue to meet the needs of a new consumer, with which needs the things to be very different than they were before? And we believe, as I'm sure you do, that technology is going to play a major role in that. We're also seeing this notion of a workplace and workspace. Workplace is now a much larger ecosystem, and the physical workspace is just one part of that, right? We're going to continue to work from everywhere. I don't think we're going to stay remote. I don't think we're going to come back 100%. Even those that are mandating, they're not necessarily mandating 100%. But buildings still play an incredible opportunity, or have an incredible opportunity to play a critical role in helping to build, great companies. So you've got an amazing vantage point, having just begun now this journey, talking with real estate partners, talking with the PropTech community. What are you seeing right now as sort of some of the dominant themes emerging in terms of how technology can respond to the industry and help it through this time?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think the question centers around getting people back to the office, right? And how that happens. And technology is certainly a part of it, but technology doesn't solely bring employees back to the office, right? Like, what brings employees back to the office, right? I want to make sure that the building is exciting. It's located in a good area. There's things for me to do that I can't do at home. There's people I want to see. There's collaboration that I want to happen, things like that. So I think technology plays a part in it, but I think we need to think about how owners are positioning their assets. And I started noticing this even before the pandemic, but it's accelerated even more since it. And that's the merging of the office sector and the hospitality sector.
Right.
And that's, I think, the key point here. Many of the Class A owners that you and I know are morphing their assets into hospitality clones.
Yeah.
I was with about 2 weeks ago, I was with a prominent Class A owner. And I recently mentioned to him, I said, I've been in a couple of your buildings recently, and I've noticed music playing every time I'm in the lobby of one of your buildings, which, if you go into office buildings often, you don't notice that, right? You walk in, you see your lobby guy, you might wave, you go through the turnstile, that's it. But for this owner, I've actually noticed, I've been in a few of their buildings recently, and I walk in and there's music, being played. And it's a nice environment. So I mentioned that to him. I said, listen, I love it if I feel like I'm walking into the W Hotel or something like that.
Right.
I like the feel. And what he told me was that over the course of the pandemic, they started replacing some of their building or operations staff with personnel from the hospitality industry.
Right.
Now, why is that? Because people want to feel good about where they work. And these people from the hospitality industry,
They get it.
They get it, right? Exactly. They know how to drive experiences. And that's what it's about right now in the office sector. And that's what it has to be about. Because if it isn't, the 20-something isn't getting off their couch to go into the office. It's just not going to happen. So owners need to be able to prioritize experiences and reimagine their buildings in a completely different way than they've ever thought about before, because it is all right now about experience. And I thought this was a really interesting one to share with you, just because you walk into these buildings and now you're hearing the music, you're getting a different vibe, and they're bringing in people from other industries, hospitality, this one, to enliven the experience even more.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. We're seeing that as well. I heard one developer, I think I was on the multifamily side, that's introducing a scent, i.e. a smell. And the hotel industry has done that for sure. Where you'll walk in, there'll be this familiar scent, that will go, oh, I get that. I know that. That's recognizable. And I think that's where, to your point, not only the music but then across different assets within a portfolio, where they're trying to not only create that experience, but they want that experience to be across their portfolio. And then what they're doing is really creating a brand.
That's right.
And I think that's where, the industry can, again, not only adopt a page from the hospitality industry, but just from the traditional marketing world. And for the most part, all businesses have always been focused on brand, but I don't think commercial real estate really understood that.
And if you look around the commercial, you have your marketing background, right? I've always been astonished that publicly traded REITs and large real estate organizations will have one dedicated marketing person.
Right.
One. I've been blown away by that for 10 years. And I think what you're going to start to see even more of is those marketing departments are going to increase. There's going to be more focused on tenant experience. You'll have those departments. You're going to have people way more focused on brand, because once you step into the door of an organization, of a specific owner, that owner is going to want that person to believe and see that that's the brand they're going to get when they step foot into any of their buildings across their portfolio. So, we talk about technology a lot, and that's what I focus on a lot with my clients. But when we talk about getting people back into the office, technology is a component of that. It's also bringing that experience to life.
Yeah, our position, and then we're very focused on that sort of that digital experience and workplace experience. But technology is not what does that, right? It does require a commitment to deliver programs and services that work towards that goal. The technology is just the delivery mechanism, right? We're the channel of communication. And sometimes, as we've continued to evolve our platform and talking with new partners, and I'm learning this as the person helping on the sales front. I'm recognizing that I have to qualify and say, listen, using technology is not the experience. You have to be committed to creating that experience and delivering that experience. And then we're just going to help you make sure we get it to the right people. And I think that's where the industry is evolving. And so just a quick off the cuff kind of question around, we obviously the Class A buildings and the flight to quality, but you and I, when we met last week in New York, talked a little bit about the B and C market and what a massive opportunity that represents. So, it's 80% of the market. They're never going to have a head of innovation. They might not even have a marketing person. It's unlikely they might have someone looking after their workplace experience sort of solution. So any thoughts, and this is sort of unscripted, but any thoughts on how we can help that, massive part of the industry be more competitive? And that's where we think technology can be a bit of an equalizer. But again, it can't be the only part of the solution.
Yeah. So look, there's a tremendous competing interest right now with those owners that we have to bring forward, right? And that's the fact that their assets are down, 40 to 60%, and those are real numbers. So once we get them to, which is not easy, right? But once you get your head out of the fact that okay, we're down a lot and we need to figure out how we reposition, which is not easy. The focus needs to be more about what we can be doing to recreate our space and allow these spaces to be destination filled, right? So the area of New York City, again, speaking in New York, that really blew up in a positive way, right? Canal Street to 34th Street, which is Midtown South. Mm-hmm. Now, you have a lot of those B buildings in Midtown South. And now did all those buildings become in favor over the past decade? Because they're the brick and beam buildings. They're the ones that the tenants want to be in. They have more character, right? There's something to them that's not Midtown, right? It's not as people talk about, it's not where our parents used to work, right? It's the Midtown South brick and beam buildings. And I know you have them in Toronto. We were talking about Allied recently about how, they have that fantastic portfolio of buildings that are in that class. So these, by the way, these are the B buildings. Now, I think it's taking the character. I think it's taking the attributes that made those buildings what they are. That's what attracted the Facebooks and the Twitters and all those types of companies and the Spotifys to those buildings. And it's building off of that. It's working with the tenant. It's working with the people inside your building to foster and create more of a sense of community, more of
Yeah.
a sense of experience. But listen, David, it's going to take a little bit of investment,
Yep.
right? And I know that's something that the real estate community doesn't want to hear right now, but we're going to have to invest in our buildings in order for them to be the destinations that we want them to be, because we understand that converting them to residential isn't a layup.
Not a slam dunk. No.
Right.
No.
It's not a layup. And we need to be creative. And listen, it's the people that invest in their businesses, in their assets when times are tricky,
Right.
that come out of it in a much better position. Now
Yep.
again, there could be some landlords and some owners that are listening to this and be like, you know what, we got much bigger problems. Like, you could talk about experience all you want, but there's going to have to be emphasis on that. There's going to have to be emphasis on turning your buildings into places where people want to go and get off their couch or leave the coffee shop to go to because of what you're providing them. So I do think there's opportunity in those B buildings, because those B buildings have character.
Yeah.
And younger people want to be in buildings with character and have a little bit something different to offer than those Class A buildings, which the Class A buildings are great, but they're different.
I agree. And I'm glad you mentioned sort of the collaboration between building owner and the occupant, their tenant. I too agree that I think there needs to be more collaboration. I don't think it's the building working independently and then the occupant working independently to create that destination. I think there's tremendous opportunity for collaboration, and together. And again, historically, you did not see that, but I think going forward, if we see more of that, I think great things can be achieved in a much bigger and better way.
I mean, you've seen it as well. It used to be you sign a lease, you give them the keys, and you kind of walk away if you're the building owner, right? Those times are over. Like that's done with. You must have a relationship with your tenant right now. Otherwise, what are you doing? What are you building? They want to feel love. They want to feel loved. And if it's way more of a partnership now in real estate than it's ever had been before.
We use that emotional word. We say, people need to love where they work and live. And it might sound soft, but it's true. We need to surprise and delight our customers, and just like the hospitality industry. So let's take a short commercial break and we'll be right back.
All right.
This episode of 10 is proudly brought to you by Hilo. Hilo is a rapid deployment workplace engagement platform for the hybrid world that enables building operators to connect to their tenants, whether they are at work, at home, or anywhere in between. We are in the midst of a seismic shift in the evolution of the workplace. Now more than ever, it's clear that the most important asset of a building is the people. Commercial real estate leaders recognize that tenants and employees want new kinds of spaces, services, and amenities to support having the flexibility to work from anywhere. Workplace engagement solutions that connect hybrid working people to buildings no matter where they are have become a major differentiator as buildings compete to retain current tenants and attract new ones. Hilo empowers building operators to meet this challenge. To learn more about Hilo and schedule a demo, visit hiloapp.com.
And now I'd like to welcome back to the show Phil Kanfer, founder and CEO of Market Lane Advisors. Again, thank you for joining me, and I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation. So Phil, listen, given our respective backgrounds and what we're doing today, I think we can both agree that technology is playing a significant role in shaping how building operators are delivering great experience to their tenants, and that workplace engagement is uppermost in everyone's mind as we look for opportunities to do things differently. So again, focusing now on helping to meet these emerging needs of people in buildings and hopefully to bring them back to these great experiences. What are you seeing? What's gaining traction? Not only in the workplace experience, side of the equation, but just overall, what kinds of startups, first of all, are you seeing most? And maybe as you're engaging with building partners, what are they asking for? What are they looking for? What do they think they need?
Yeah, well, listen, to go with your last question first, you'd be surprised how many owners are still on Excel.
Okay.
And they're still using archaic systems, and they know it,
Right.
but it is early innings for a lot of these owners, right? Like we can't only talk about the Class A++ owners that that hit the papers, hit the real deal, hit the trades, right? Mm-hmm. There's many hundreds of owners that are still using manual tasks. where there's a very efficient and automated way of doing things. And it's difficult to get into all of them, in one conversation, but there's a shift that I'm seeing that's going on in real estate in terms of a mind shift and thinking. I do see now owners that are focused on creating the new version of their business, right? Like how do we look in 2025 and beyond, right? 2024 and beyond. And they realize that the way that they're doing things today has to change. Why? Because the industry has changed. And it's because PropTech companies have been smart with their offerings. They've identified, some needs and some gaps in the marketplace, the way people do things. I'll give you an example, right? There's a few companies out there, and I think this has been in vogue recently with AI, but companies out there that are doing lease abstracting, through machine learning. Now, how does that process occur today? How do you look at a lease and how do you abstract a lease? It's an admin. It's someone. It could be legal. Lawyers are looking at that as well. But this is a manual process that's being done by the majority of real estate companies that are out there in the world right now, and it takes a ton of time and it's massively inefficient. And you have real companies that are out there right now that are bringing AI and machine learning with tremendously high degrees of accuracy to make that process more efficient, less time consuming, and just a better mousetrap for people. So if you think of that, right, like automating a manual task, this is being done across the industry right now. We're replacing the manual with the automated, and doing so in a way where we could be more efficient with our time. Right. So like that's one example. I think we need to think about, we need to go non-tenant facing versus tenant facing, right? Because there's a lot of technology that's out there in the industry that the tenant doesn't see, but that the owner is adopting, that is very, very useful to that end user, and very, very useful to the building owner. There have been tremendous advances in energy management over the past decade. I think the advancements have been incredible. I just spent the past 4 months doing diligence on close to 24 energy management platforms. And what they're able to do now for an owner to help them, reduce their emissions and save costs, and assist engineering team. The end user might not see that happening, but it's happening behind the scenes. There's software connecting to BMS systems that's reducing costs, reducing emissions, and just helping owners be smarter with their ESG strategies. So you're seeing things in the energy management space. You're seeing things with sensors. There's companies out there like an InfoGrid that's deploying sensors to allow owners to understand their buildings more. For instance, hey, there hasn't been this tenant or these group of people haven't occupied this side of the office or this side of the building in the past week. And guess what? We don't have to deploy a lot of cleaning staff, or we don't have to deploy a lot of time and attention to that area because people haven't been there. Those are OpEx costs for owners that, with new technologies that are out in the marketplace, is just getting owners smarter and better connected to their buildings to understand them more. So there's things that are going on that, the tenant may or may not see, that operationally are helping buildings get to that next level.
Right.
In terms of, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think you're quite astute to point out that there's the tenant facing and the non-tenant facing, and some of those non-tenant facing are massive opportunities that ultimately have dramatic impact on the experience that's offered, and also likely in terms of costs associated with the running of the building.
That's 100% right. And, I think we were talking about it before, but innovation is built brick by brick, right? That's how it's built, brick by brick, until we get to the final result where transformation occurs. Right. There isn't a magic pixie dust that you could sprinkle over an organization that will ultimately bring tenants back to the building or completely transform your organization because of this piece of technology. It's not out there in the marketplace, but layer by layer, brick by brick, as we continue to implement new technology systems that yields a better experience.
Yeah.
From a tenant facing standpoint, what are some of the things that I'm seeing as well? I see owners, I'm going to talk now top of the market, class A plus, that are focused more on smart buildings today. So think of, you're sitting at your desk. I'm an employee and I'm sitting at my desk and I book a conference room, and they know that Phil Kanfer booked the conference room, and that conference room already knows my AV preferences, how I like the temperature, how I like the room to be set up, the lighting, all that kind of stuff, so that when I get in, I can start my meeting.
Right.
How many times do we go into a meeting and it's at 2:00 and it doesn't start till 2:10 or 2:15 because we're hooking up USBs, we're making sure that the prompter's working, whatever it is, and it takes away from the meeting. So there's smart building technologies that are allowing that to happen. Allow me to be able to sit at my desk and control the temperature, control the shades just by the press of a button. Mm-hmm. Right? Like these are things that I'm seeing some of the top of the market that are focused on smart buildings, bringing in smarter tenants, more sophisticated tenants that care about things like that.
Right.
So that's one part of it. Some of the others, they're not going to be the sexiest ones, but they help with it from an experience standpoint, right? We could talk about, don't yawn, but we could talk about access control for a second. There are buildings I know that I go to that I have to get there 15 minutes early, because I'm going to get there, I'm going to check in, I'm not going to be in the system. They're going to have to talk to the tenant, they have to put me in, and I'm waiting 15 minutes. So what happens now? There are some buildings I go to, I just get a QR code sent to me the day before. I get the QR code, I get to the building, I scan it through the reader, it knows what floor I'm going to, I go right up, done. I don't have to interface with anybody at the lobby, nothing. Like, those are experiences. Now, by the way, are those experiences that are bringing tenants back to the building? No, but you see the thought process happening, right? Owners are implementing these things way more than they have been in the past. And those are all things that drive experience.
Well, and then your brick by brick analogy, I think, is a good one. It's each one of these little points in time or points along the continuum of what that experience looked like contributes to a better experience ultimately.
And experience led, right? And that's, going to take things from our conversation today. It's erring on the side of more experience, because technology will yield the experience, but there isn't a one-stop shop. I'll give you another example. It's been publicized in here in New York, but there's an owner called Mark's Realty, and Mark's has done a couple of interesting things. One, they have a Porsche Cayenne, I believe it is, one or two in their building that their tenants could use. It's at their disposal. So, hey, come sign a lease in our building, and you're going to have access to this Porsche Cayenne. Never happened before.
It's very cool.
In addition, now this is very cool, right? That super cool. Now, in addition, this is going to sound trivial, but it completes the picture for someone who's deciding between, or maybe it doesn't complete it, but it helps the picture of someone who's deciding, should I work from home or should I go to the office? They have, those Keurig coffee machines, right? Mm-hmm. So they have a Keurig coffee machine type thing, but it's for gelato.
Right.
So I was in the office on a Friday, and he shows me this machine, and he opens up his fridge, and it's completely empty. Nothing in the fridge. Now, generally, he said there's these gelato pods stacked in the fridge. People come in, they take them. It was empty because everyone's used them. Now, what is that doing? Me and my team, who's working in that building, has the opportunity to go to this Keurig machine, make some gelato as a team. It's so cool. Who doesn't want to go to work and have ice cream and enjoy themselves? Right. Have a team meeting, go take your team and debrief in this corner. And again, it sounds silly, right? But these are the things that are fostering senses of community. And instead of, again, sitting on your couch, like, hey, I'm going to go in and I'm going to chat with my team. I'm going to collaborate. We're going to have some ice cream. We're going to go for a walk. Like, these are, they're small, right? But if we go brick by brick,
they add up. They add up, and they're not expensive. I think we could go on. And I think as you're just continuing to get your feet wet in this new role in this new company, I think you're going to have a lot of fun doing it. I think you're going to be creating a a lot of opportunity on both sides of the coin, helping building operators to be more efficient with their deployment of technology and helping, the best startups, the best technology providers to find new opportunities within the industry. I look forward to continuing our conversation, finding ways to collaborate. And we'll definitely continue this conversation. Hopefully have you back on a future episode to see, where we are, 6 months or 12 months from now. And I suspect it'll be a little bit different for sure. Before we let you go, though, our closing speed round, just to get an opportunity to get to know Phil a little bit more on a personal level. So I'm just curious, when you're not working, when you're not building out this new company, what do you enjoy doing?
When I'm not working, you're most likely to find me on a baseball field with my family and my son, who is playing baseball every weekend. So that's the most likely place you're going to find me, on a baseball field somewhere in the New York tri-state area. Okay,
very good. Is there a favorite drink of choice, beverage of choice?
Yeah, I keep it simple. I'm a bourbon on the rocks kind of guy. Okay. Maybe a Blanton's on the rocks. Okay. Pretty simple.
Okay. Mental note. Favorite movie or current TV series that you're watching?
Favorite movie is probably Rounders.
Okay, I don't know that one. Rounders. Okay.
It's Matt Damon and it's Ed Norton Jr. It's okay. It's a good one. You should check it out.
Okay, I will. Name one way in which technology has improved how you personally live or work.
Yeah, I mean, look, the easy thing is Zoom and video chatting, right? Like, there's nothing better than in person, but yeah. there are smaller type meetings that can be achieved in the way we use Zoom and we use video chatting, where we used to get on a plane for a quick meeting that we needed to accomplish, and I think now the industry has accepted and appreciated that we could use video chatting in a way that we haven't used before. It's not my preferred use of and way of communication, right. But it gets the job done on smaller meetings that would generally be in person.
Agreed. What is your personal choice for days spent in person, working with colleagues versus working remotely, working from anywhere?
Yeah, look, I want to be around people. I love collaboration. I'm a people person. I get my energy off of being around others. Yeah. Being realistic, I see that 3 days a week is probably a healthy balance for the workforce right now. Mm-hmm. If it's me, I want to see people. Is it 5 days a week in the office? It's probably not. We're probably not going back to that. But 3 or 4 days, I think there's no better substitute than being around people and being able to collaborate and share ideas.
Sounds good to me. Listen, Phil, thank you so much for joining me on the program today. Thanks for sharing your insights. Wishing you continued success as you build out Market Lane. Look forward to finding opportunities to collaborate and continuing our conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Phil. Take care.
All right.
I want to thank Phil Kanfer for joining me on this episode of 10 and for contributing to the global conversation around buildings being part of a robust ecosystem, helping to build great companies, and that they are vital in the effort to cultivate and support great people and teams. The future of the workplace will likely take many forms, and we will continue to explore what that looks like together. Subscribe to 10 for more conversations with leading CRE industry professionals and experts who all have something to say about tenant experience and the future of the workplace. We love hearing from you, so if you enjoyed this episode of 10, please share, add your rating, and review us through your preferred podcast provider. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on a future episode, please reach out to me directly at david@hiloapp.com. And until our next episode, I wish you all continued success in building community where you work and live. Thank you.